friends, welcome to the next episode of DotVVM Minutes. Today I would like to show you different kinds of static command binding in DotVVM. You will see how to do a simple calculator application with 6 different types of ways of how to implement its functions, and we will be using static commands, classic commands, JS modules, and you will see what options do you have to implement basically application logic in DotVVM apps. So let's start with showing the application itself. So as you can see, it's a simple calculator application. I can type some number and create some math operation, and when I click equals, the result is calculated. And basically all these things have been implemented using static commands, and I have 6 different versions, so you will see 6 different options how to actually implement this. First thing which is getting interesting is how the static commands work and what types of them we have. And it's great to open developer tools and look at the network tab, because it will show you all the communication which the .vvm application is doing with the server. So let me put this to one side of the screen, not like this, like this. And let me put this to the other side of the screen. And now I will clear this console. And now let's use this panel. So I'm using this application, and you can see there are no requests to the server. It's not because I would configure this wrong. It's just because some static commands can be just translated to JavaScript by .vvm and performed locally in the browser. So this version of the calculator doesn't send anything to the server. It's just client only. Let's see how the code looks like. So first we have this clear button, which is just setting the value property to 0. And if I'm deleting the last numbers from the keyboard, it's basically this operation, like I'm just dividing the number by 10 and subtracting the decimal part. If I want to use the plus button, then I will store which operation I have performed. I will store the value in the first value property and reset the value, which is exactly what the plus number does, and so on. And this is only assignments of values into viewModel properties. So the .vvm basically have all the data in the viewModel to perform this static command. So in this case, .vvm doesn't have to call the server, because this gets translated to JavaScript directly. Yeah, because these are just simple assignments, nothing complicated. Yeah, adding the 7 number means that you will 10x the value which is already there and add 7 to that, and so on. Yeah, so only local operations. The most interesting is the equals button, which has this complicated expression. Of course, this is not a perfect way how to do this, but basically if the operation is plus, the result will be plus. If the operation is minus, we will be subtracting, and so on. And if this is the last type of the operation, so in all other cases we will be dividing. Yeah, so because I have written it like this, it doesn't call any method, any function, anything like that. This will also be translated to the JavaScript. So in this first demo, everything is happening on the client. Of course, if this method should be more complicated, more complex, with some more sophisticated logic, then this method would not be possible, because, or otherwise you would be maybe able to write the expression like that, but it would be very long and not very well maintainable. So this is good for simple things. You can do them without even calling the server. Let's try the second version. Now I'm using also the static commands, but this equals button, because the logic is quite complex, and if I would be adding more and more functions to that, it would be difficult. So I have replaced this by the call to a method. So I have default view model dot calculate total, and I'm just returning the result from that. So I will assign the result to the value, and I'm passing their parameters like operation, first value, and value. So everything the method will need to produce the result, it's getting it as parameters, and it returns the real result. So if I press F12, you can see I have placed this method in the view model, but it can be anywhere because it's a static method. Yeah, it's static. So it has to have the allow static command. It's a safety feature because you really don't want the potential attackers to be able to call any static method of their choice. That's why we only allow static commands to methods which are decorated by this attribute. And here are the parameters, and I'm returning a result. And in the static command, I can use the result and assign it to the view model. So now this is calling server, and because it's a static method, there is no view model involved, nothing like that. So it's only getting these three simple values, and it's returning another value. So let's try this second demo. Yeah, let me reset the console now, and let's do a math operation like this. And I have also written a piece of JavaScript which tells me how many bytes was sent to the server, how many bytes were received from the server. So let's dig into the details. If we will look here on the payload, you can see we are sending the CSRF token. It's a security thing, so people wouldn't, like attackers couldn't like throw requests to our site from other sites. And here, this is encrypted definition of a command, which should be evaluated on the server. Yeah, we cannot like allow the attackers to pass there any kind of string because so this is protected. So this is then you can think of it as an ID of a command. And here are the parameters. So first parameter is the operation. I was multiplying, and these are the two numbers. Yeah, so it's getting some ID of a method that would be called, and also the argument, and the response is just result is 90. Yeah, so it's a double, so there is the .0, but the result is 90. Yeah, so it's pretty efficient. It's just like sending few bytes to the server and back, so nothing complicated. But now in this demo there is already some communication to the server. So the method is a static in this case. Yeah, so I'm calling a static method. Let's go to our next sample. It's the same. All the buttons are doing the same things. However, this is not a static method. This is now an instance method on the view model. Yeah, so if I go here, it will be, oh, sorry, it's not great. It navigated me to wrong place. It should be default 3 view model. And here, this calculate total, it is a instance method, so no static here. And it means that I don't have to pass the values as parameters, but I can just like use them from the view model. However, this approach is not anything I would recommend. I'm showing it here just for completeness because there are some caveats to that. Yeah, so I can theoretically use these 3 things and I can use this method, but it means because I'm calling this method on underscore this, it means that the entire view model or the entire this would be sent to the server, and this is in our case, because this page is simple, it's the entire view model. So be careful if you are using static commands but you are calling instance methods on a root view model, you will not really save anything in comparison to the classic commands because they are also transferring the entire view model. Yeah, in the static command you will be also transferring the entire view model because you are calling the method on this, so the server needs this to be able to call a method on it. Yeah, so it's great if this is not the entire view model. If it's just a tiny little part of the view model you want to send to the server, do something and return it back and possibly assign the result somewhere, that's fine. You can use instance methods using static commands, but also be careful that because we are not transferring the entire view model, some properties of the view model may be empty, may be null. Yeah, so it's a bit like dangerous feature. So I would like recommend avoid using that. Do not use that until you really have to, because it's not very intuitive. I'm just showing it for completeness. So let's try it, this sample, and delete the console again. And we will have, for the comparison, we will see how many bytes it will transfer. You can see there is a little bigger overhead to that. And here the response is 1 byte more because this number is basically longer. Yeah, so there is a slightly higher overhead, but the payload looks basically the same, just the command ID is also quite long. And here the arguments also, first argument is the type of the object that is coming there. Yeah, there is only one argument because we are calling method without arguments. The only argument is this. Yeah, so basically this is the entire serialization of the entire view model. If you are using static commands, using static methods, the big issue there is it's not easy to get a request context. It's not easy to use like services from the dependency injection and so on. So that's why we created that's called static command services, which you can inject in your views, and they can use the DI dependencies as free as possible. So you can do that by using the service directive. So I'm declaring a service called calc, which like corresponds to this instance of this class. It can also be an interface. And here I'm calling this calculate total on this calc service, which I have like resolved at the top of the view. Yeah. You also have to pass the entire state you will need. So I'm passing 3 parameters there because the service doesn't know anything about the view model. It's just a service with some methods which you can call from the views. You also have to use the allow static command, or you can decorate the entire service with that. But the great thing is it's not a static method, and you can use the constructor to request any dependency. So here in the constructor parameters, you can you can ask for DB context, you can ask for any kind of service you would need, and the only thing you have to do is to request the service in startup. Yeah, so in startup I have added services at singleton, or if it's not singleton, it can be scoped, transient, it's up to you, but it has to be registered in the service collection. Then the .vvm will be able to resolve this service. Yeah. So that's another way how to do that, and it's quite practical because it's very easy to reuse this service from different views, and because the logic is not implemented in the view model, like you cannot accidentally touch the view model and then be surprised that there is null in that. Yeah, so you can work with dependencies, and you can, it's much cleaner approach because it's basically something similar to a REST API. You will send all the parameters in and you will get some result. Yeah. And of course, async methods are supported everywhere, so it can also return task. Here it's just an in-memory operation, so I don't need async, but I could use it if I want it. So let's try it to see how it looks like. So here we are. Yeah, you can see it's the same overhead as in the static command, because we are not transferring the entire view model. We are just sending the parameters. So it's the same here, like 3 parameters and the command ID, and we are getting a simple result. Nothing complicated. These static commands, which were calling methods on the server either static or instance methods, they communicate with the server. Not like the first example where we put all the logic in the dot HTML file in the bindings so DotVVM could translate it to JavaScript. If you want to perform the operations locally, there is another way how to do that, and it's using the JS module. So let's see the sample number 5. And here, instead of service directive, I'm using JS directive, and I'm requesting calc service, which is this script here. It has to be registered as a resource. So in .vvm startup, I'm going to configure resources, and you can see I'm calling register script module file, name of the module, and or name of the .vvm resource, and the path where .vvm will be able to find it. And now I'm requesting that, and I can call methods in this view model. So in this module. So I'm using _JS invoke. I have to tell .vvm what will be the result type, because this is JavaScript thing, so we don't have the type information for that. You have to hint .vvm, oh, I'm expecting double from the view model, and the method name is calculate total, and here are the parameters I'm passing to this method. Yeah, so that's how you can invoke function from the view model, from the JS module. It can return a result which will be assigned to this property again. Yeah, so if I look in the script all the time it needs to do this. All JS modules in .vvm need to have a default export, which is a factory method how to create an instance of a module. So it gets a context and it should return a new object, because the module can be imported multiple times, like each user control can import its module. So we need multiple instances. That's why we are exporting a factory for the module instances. So I'm like doing this, and here the calc service, it's just taking the context and stores it, but I'm not using it in this sample, but it's useful sometimes to have it present, so that's why I'm storing it here. And this calculate total function, it has 3 parameters: operation, first value, and it can do any kind of logic in JavaScript and return a result. And again, we are also supporting async functions, so if you need to call some APIs or do any kind of asynchronous operation, you can declare this function as async, use await inside, and in the view, just you have to tell .vvm that it would return task of double. Yeah, and that's how you would use async in this case. So here you can write any kind of complicated logic, anything you need. Use any JavaScript libraries, anything like that. This will work. And I'm using pure JavaScript here, so no type information, no TypeScript. But the good thing is I don't need to transpile it to anything, because all modern browsers support ECMAScript modules. So this syntax is supported, this lambda syntax is supported. And also this class keyword is supported in all browsers today. So you can safely use this modern JavaScript, and you don't need to use any transpilers or anything like that. If you want to use TypeScript, check out the previous episode of .vvm Minutes. I was showing a pipeline which is using esbuild to build TypeScript file and produce this JS module from a TypeScript file. This was very easy demo, so I didn't put TypeScript inside. Now, if we try this in the browser, like call JS module, so if we try this, you will see there is no communication whatsoever, no communication with the browser, because this is just the client side logic. And the last example, it's not about static commands, it's about classic commands. So here I'm just calling calculate total function on the view model, the classic approach. Even this, this is navigating me to a wrong place. Here should be, here should be default 6 view model. So it's my mistake. And here, so I'm calling this calculate total function, and I'm working with that normally like you are used to from classic normal commands. So I have to recompile that, I'm afraid. Let's try the classic command approach. And so if I try, you can see that now we are exchanging much more bytes. Like also the response is quite big because we are always sending the entire view model to the server and receiving the changes made to the view model together with some metadata. This is why the response is that big. So let's see. You can see here I'm also getting this, and also it's not updating some controls. Yeah, it's re-rendering this menu because so this is a bit unfair because this command is re-rendering this menu. But the other things which are here is that we are sending view model div and the value property is now 168. So if I would get rid of this, which is quite long because it's the menu, then it would be, the response would be similar, have similar efficiency. However, I'm always transferring the entire view model. Now the view model doesn't contain like anything which is not useful, but in many cases you are transferring the entire view model, but the command is using just one or two properties from that, and the rest is transferred like without any particular reason. So one of the performance optimizations you can do in .vvm is that you will replace commands with static commands. And if you manage to write it so it would be translatable to JavaScript, it's even better because in that case, you will avoid the communication to the server at all. There is in the .vvm documentation, there is one very interesting or like very useful page. If you navigate to the concepts and data binding, to supported expressions, here is a list of things you can use in data binding expressions. So like accessing properties, accessing root parent, collections, and things like that. Binary operations, this ternary conditional. Yeah, I was showing it here. And also we can use these expression blocks, which not everyone knows, because we don't support these curly braces. But if you want to do two things, you can chain them like that. And you can also declare variables in the bindings and use the string interpolation. And here there are methods which you can use, and we will be able to translate them to their JavaScript equivalents. Yeah, so we are using a lot of methods on string. We can also do a lot of things with collections. We even have our own special functions which will help you, for example, search in the collection, and if there is a record with same ID, just replace it. If it's not there, add it to the collection. Yeah, so this add or update is quite useful. And there is also remove first, remove last, and things like that. Yeah. And in some next episodes, I will show you how to extend this list of possible translations, because it's extensible. You can implement your own JavaScript translation. So go through this page, because it will show you what methods you can actually use in your bindings, and these will be translated to JavaScript. So if you use them in static command, you will not be needing to call the server and transmit any data. I hope that these 6 methods of doing the calculator app were useful for you. Feel free to download the demo and play with that. Open the DevTools, the network tab, and look what is actually being sent from the client to the server and back, and do the same thing in your own application, because you may see that sometimes you are transferring way more data than it's actually needed. Always think, it really helps me to always think about the .vvm view models as both like state persistence mechanism, but also an API. If you would be implementing the logic as a REST API, you would also probably not request the clients to send you the entire view model just to change 2 little properties. You would create a special method that gets just these 2 values which need, which it needs and returns some result. And you can do the same thing with static commands. So try to think about that in the same way as you would be designing an API, and you can save a lot of data being transferred between the server and the client. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down under the video or reach out to us at Gitter or any other channel. We'll be happy to talk, we'll be happy to help you, and see you next time in DotVVM Minutes.